director. All right, now we're live. So people can call in. We're just waiting for Kurt Calafucci, which is the chairman. And then Kurt will begin the meeting officially. And then we'll have you give a pretty short presentation and welcome to officially to you to the council.
Thank you. Oh, that's good.
Hello.
Hey, Kurt, how are you doing today?
Good, good. Sorry, someone came into my office, but I don't know why I can't find the links, when I search for it.
Okay, so Kurt, just to let you know, we're live, so other people can participate.
Okay.
And we can begin the meeting, but also just want to bring to your attention that Wendell Lee is a new member of the commission or the council. So maybe we could also, at some point in the meeting, just do a brief introduction and everything. So go ahead.
Okay. Well, Councilmember Wendell Lee, welcome to the Council of Revenues.
Thanks, Kurt.
Yeah. Okay, so we're calling the meeting to order. Okay. Dr. Kobe, is there any communications to the council?
None.
Okay. Okay. Next item, we approved the minutes?
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Marilyn, didn't you have a comment on the minutes?
I don't, is Marilyn?
Marilyn is not on the call, Kurt.
Oh, okay. Okay, I know she contacted me right before the meeting. Okay. 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 So take a vote on the minutes. Dr. Seidenhout?
Aye.
Dr. Bonham?
Aye.
Councilmember Maynard?
Aye.
Councilmember Hayashi?
Aye.
Okay, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4. And then because Councilmember Lee, you weren't at the meeting, so we have 5 votes to approve the minutes. Is that?
Yes, we got it.
Okay. Okay, next item on the agenda, Dr. Kobe, is
The discussion and vote for the total TPI. I think you're sharing your screen, Kurt.
oh, okay. I'm
Into your
sorry.
email.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so Dr. Bonham, would you like to lead us off on the current year's personal income forecast?
Carl, you're on mute if
You're
you're trying to speak.
That's to keep me from sticking my foot in my mouth. So, Seth, can you share our current forecast?
Yes.
So I don't have to
The
look for it.
current forecast for 2021 is -4%.
And that these are all calendar year forecasts,
Correct.
and they're nominal.
They are nominal.
Well, that seems kind of extreme. -4%. So that was consistent with our old way too low tax forecast. And the year to date, we have first quarter data, which was extremely high because of transfer payments, the direct payments to households continued. It was 16.4% growth in the first quarter of the year over year. Our expectation is that number will turn negative in the second quarter, but we certainly don't see a second quarter number of, did you say -4%?
Yes.
Wow.
So if you guys look at table 4, which is page 6 of your packets, you'll see what the official council's forecast in all of the different models. And table 3, the page before, shows how your official forecast in 2020, and then how all the different models in the actual. So you can see how they shaped up as well.
This is Christy. I think in general, we had thought that 2020 was artificially high, of course, because of all the transfer payments, and that we would come off of that extremely high number. And then, of course, we had a bunch more in 2021. So I'm not sure how much of that 16% that was increased in the first quarter of this year, how much of that was transfer payments. Is there any way to get a feeling for that?
Sure. But regardless, so you have to remember, so we made that forecast in October of 2020 before any stimulus was passed, before the election, before we've had multiple rounds of stimulus, right? There was a second round of unemployment benefits under the former administration, then there was the extension of the pandemic unemployment assistance and the PEUC, plus an additional round of stimulus and PPP. So that old forecast is really, it's not even really worth looking at.
Carl, there were two major bills. One was in late December of 2020, and there was another one in March of 2021. Correct. So there was two big legislation.
Yeah, and they completely changed the environment. So if you look at what happened in the first quarter of the year, well, I'm trying to load the spreadsheet right now. In the first quarter of the year, there was $8 billion in transfer payments. These are all annualized. So direct payments to households, economic impact payments of 8.7 billion. So that made up, let's see, about more than 10%, no, excuse me, a little bit less than 10% of total income. Total personal income in the first quarter was 95.4 billion, and there was 8.7 billion in these direct payments to households. There was 6 billion in unemployment insurance, and around 4 billion of that, more than that, closer to 5 billion of that was the extended unemployment and pandemic emergency and pandemic unemployment assistance.
So council members, just to point something out, so on table 7, under the component analysis, on page 9, you can actually see the breakdowns of all the different total personal income by year. In the forecast is the forecast, there are 2021 and 2022, those estimated payments, that is provided by the UCLA Anderson Forecasting School, or UCLA Anderson forecasting department. So you
their on model,
it's a
their model
correct.
Run by us.
Yeah, it's a model run by us, correct. But this is the components, right? And so if you look down all the way second to the bottom of the first table, you'll see current transfer payments, right? And on 2017, it starts off 11.9 billion, and then it goes all the way to 2022 with 16.4 billion. What you'll see is, there was a huge increase in transfer payments between 2019 and 2020, but even according to Anderson, the Anderson School, or these forecasts, 2021 will be bigger than 2020, and 2022 will be, you'll see a decrease, but you will not see it return to pre-pandemic levels according to their forecast.
So you say we see a decrease, but it's not going to return to pre-pandemic levels?
Not in 2022, according to Anderson Forecasting School.
In other words, in 2022, they expect us still to be lower than pre-pandemic levels?
So,
No.
in So just at
I have-
2019, which was pre-pandemic, was 12.6 billion. In 2020, which was last year, 21.2 billion. In 2021, it's 22.5 billion. And then in 2022, it goes to 16.4 billion.
So we're only talking about the transfer payments.
Yes.
So I would suggest that those numbers are too high.
Which
The-
numbers are we talking about? Are we talking about just the transfer payments or the total
Yeah.
personal income?
Yeah, the transfer payments.
Okay.
I mean, there's no particular reason. So there has been an increase in people signing up for Medicare and Medicaid, and an increase in retirement. So more Social Security payments. But I mean, really, I think 2021 transfer payments, unless we basically get stuck at this level of unemployment, and even then the benefits will run out. So I think you're going to see transfer payments in 2021 for the whole year, probably $1 billion or $2 billion lower than 2020, and in 2022. I mean, our expectation is that we'll be down in the 14-15 billion range in 2022. But regardless, actually, the number that you have right there in the table on table 7 on page 9, is that what this is?
Mhm.
The 2021 total personal income forecast for nominal personal income of 1.2%. I think that's not unreasonable. That was the forecast that we had in our May forecast. I actually think it'll probably be a little bit higher than that, but it's certainly in the ballpark.
Hey, but Carl, when you were saying that, do you include the child tax care or child tax credits and the extension, the EITC, in the transfer receipts, or is that somewhere else for you guys?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't know.
Okay.
So do you recall the overall size of, so I'm pretty sure that EITC would be there. I'm not sure. Yeah, I just don't know.
Well, the child tax credits wouldn't be considered part of this personal income calculation because that's really a tax advance, I would say. So people are getting the money, but they might have to return it, or it's basically an advance. It's basically advance for their taxes.
Well, I would push back a
I
little
don't think that's
on
right.
that with you, Marilyn, because for example, if we just assume that the child tax credit is classified the same as the EITC, which is the earned income tax credit, which is one of the largest cash transfers that available from the federal government, that usually is included in current transfer receipts.
Yeah.
So I think they would be, and since CTC or child tax credit is refundable, it's not like you're just pushing up, I mean, you can get the refund at the end of the year, but people are getting it and it is a refundable tax credit, right? So it's a little bit more generous than just kind of canceling out tax liabilities. Either way, it would probably show up in current transfer receipts.
But how much of it is a timing issue in the sense that it pushes up the credit, the benefits of the credit earlier in the year?
It is an advance credit, so it does push it up from what
Right.
it would normally
But
have.
it also expanded the amount of the credit.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
There'll be more tax credits available,
More and sooner.
but they're just getting it in advance.
Right.
Well, it's not just getting it in advance. All of a sudden, somebody is getting more money from the government than before, right?
Well, usually they didn't. Usually the child tax credit, you take the credit on your tax return, so they're not going to advance you for the whole year. I believe it goes all the way to December 31st for this year, and then you calculate it out when you file your tax return to see how much you're entitled to. So it's just an
Correct.
advance cash
But in
flow.
January, instead of somebody receiving $100 refundable tax credit as they did in 2020, in 2021, if they waited and there was no speeding up, they would receive more than $100. Right? So the amount of actual money that you're receiving from the federal government is doing two things. It's one, it's increasing in absolute terms, and two, it's being sped up. So instead of hitting in calendar year 2022, it's going to hit most of it in calendar year 2021.
Correct. You get more of the tax benefit. Well, you get the tax credits in as an advance credit in 2021. But it's
You get a one-time infusion, right? If you speed up the income stream.
I think the point Seth is trying to make is that it's not only speeding it up, but it's also bigger. Is that correct?
Yeah.
that's
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, does it help us in terms of discussing the forecast to shift the focus a bit to the total personal income, or do we want to stick with the components? Because I mean, if we say that the components are overstated for 2021 and 2022, you know, how much are we talking about? It looks like what Carl was saying. It was maybe about 3 billion as a possibility.
Still, so I have enough uncertainty about how we included the child tax credit to not be very concerned about that point. And like I said, the headline number that's coming out of the model to me looks quite reasonable. I would actually be inclined for 2021 to be a little bit higher, but you know, what's 50 basis points amongst friends with our kinds of forecast errors? So just FYI, it is counted in transfer payments. Child tax credit's definitely going to get counted in the transfer payments. I mean, I would be happy with a number like 1.5 or 2% for 2021.
And
So at the
Jack,
last meeting, we increased the forecast 12 points, right? Dramatically. We went from -7 to 5. No, it was a 12-point swing.
Well, so that's what happens when you do a
Yeah.
forecast before you get all this federal money, and then it's dumped in your lap.
Right.
You know, how big was our swing in our tax forecast? From like -5 to +2 or something?
I don't know exactly, but I know it was we had a double-digit swing for personal income. It was 12 points.
So, and I think that's justified that we would have a big swing
Yeah,
because we had so much in transfer payments coming through. The one-time stimulus that happened 3 or 4 times, and the extra unemployment, and now the tax credit. So there was a lot of stuff that was that was
And-
happening.
and
That,
subsequently, we had a couple big stimulus payments, you know, into those 2 bills at the end of last year in March.
right. So all of those things, our first forecast from way back when did not have the assumption that all that money would be coming in. So I think it makes sense that we change the forecast. It makes sense that we are more optimistic. What I don't have a good feeling for, and maybe that's the next item on the agenda, is what does this mean for 2022? Because the economy is growing. I mean, the GDP for the second quarter was positive 6.5. It doesn't appear that we need a lot more stimulus to be thrown at everyone for the economy to do well. That doesn't mean we won't have more, but it doesn't appear that the economy needs it. So I think that's the bigger question, or that's just as an important question. What will happen when all the stimulus stops?
So our current, actually our current work in progress forecast is not very different than our last released forecast. And essentially we would go from about 1.5 or 2% this year to a -2% next year.
So Carl, are you saying that you think it's about 1.5 for this year?
Yeah, I mean, anything between 1 and 3 is probably reasonable. And same thing on the negative side for 2022. If I were to pick a number right now, which is our job today, I would say +2 and -2.
+2, and we're talking nominal. So if you assume that inflation is
Yeah,
what, 2.5, you're
3.
okay. Assuming inflation 3, then we're still dealing with the -1% real growth.
Yeah, so as of June, there's 14% fewer jobs in Hawaii than there were pre-pandemic. So it's kind of hard to get that real wage growth, real income growth when your workforce is smaller.
Right.
Right. So it's the labor, it's the labor component that's pulling it down, not dividends, interest, and rent, or transfer payments, or.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you can see that on table 7.
I
Yeah.
guess I see it here all over in Maui. You know, they're short of staff. They have to cut back on operations because they can't find staff. And what happened to the staff, I think some of them moved to the mainland. Some of the baby boomers decided, hey, this is too much stress. I'm going to just retire and I won't work any longer. And other people said, well, we got enough stimulus money, unemployment. I'm just not going to work as long as I receive additional money. So I think the combination of those is responsible for a lot of loss of wages. And whether that will come back, I don't know.
Councilmember Hayashi, do you have any comments?
Not really. I mean, I think looking at the numbers and hearing what Carl says makes sense. I mean, especially if there's the transfer receipts, or I guess what he's forecasting is that they're a little bit overstated currently under from this model. So I would think, yeah, I think a 1.5 might be, a comfortable number as far as increase for 2021.
Hi, this is Wendell. If we're predicting inflation at 3%, and let's say now employers are willing to increase wages, has that been factored in? Because I just see inflation being a little higher than that, just from the standpoint, you go out to dinner now, it seems substantially more expensive than it was pre-pandemic. They don't have staffing. They're going to have to pay more. I live in a condo where we're being pushed to pay more to our resident advisors. Is that 3% reasonable from the standpoint? It's got to be a point in time when employers are going to feel that pressure to increase wages.
Well, I think that the problem is that if they increase costs more, then there have to be adjustments everywhere in prices, and then the profits
Right.
will be lower.
That's his point.
And so
Why are profits lower if you raise the price of your product to match the increased cost of?
There's a point when people aren't going to be willing to pay the higher prices. They'll seek alternatives.
Well, we certainly haven't hit that yet, given the increasing consumer spending. So nationally, real disposable income, the latest data point would have been a decline. But personal consumption is still rising, and it's true that prices are rising in more than 3% at the moment. That doesn't mean that for the whole year it's going to be 3%. And what I threw out was our forecast for the year. Right now, there's there's very little evidence of wage growth. And that may actually be part of the problem for why people aren't going to taking jobs. Is we hear a lot about it in the press, but if you look at the hard data on wages, it's just not showing. It is true that wages are going up relative to the pandemic, but relative to pre-pandemic, there's really not much change. If you look at what retail employees are making hourly weekly. What happened? Sorry, I'm trying to look at data, and it's
Carl, your point surprises me a little bit because everywhere I turn, I seem to see signs that employers are paying people more. So I'm a little surprised that it's not showing up more in the numbers, and it could be that obviously that we're dealing with small samples when you're looking out the car window. But still, all the stories I hear are that inflation, and including wage inflation, is picking up significantly.
Well, you are seeing some increase in food service. That's probably the biggest place where you're seeing a change. So if you looked at hourly wages in eating and drinking establishments, that hourly wage in June was 17.6 statewide, and so it's $1 more than it was before the pandemic, maybe $1.50 more. But if you look at accommodations and food service combined, it really hasn't changed at all. So it depends on the industry. The biggest change has been in food service. Retail, trade, not much different than before the pandemic, maybe 50 cents different. So if you put those in real terms, their real wages are still going down.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the fact that we have fewer people actually working, certainly contributes to that also.
The one thing, if you go to hotels now, they don't have the room service. They don't clean your rooms every day like they used to. They don't have as much service.
Yeah.
And so they must have just cut back on the number of employees and just gave you extra towels and said, because of the pandemic, we're not going to service your room. So there's a lot of jobs probably lost from people saying that they're accommodating the pandemic. Restaurants have cut back on their capacity. Here in Maui, it's 75% capacity, not 100%. So we'll never get back to the 100 maybe. And so I think maybe, although the wages have risen for some of the ones who have jobs, maybe they just aren't the number of jobs around.
Yeah, so you have to have a pretty big wage increase to offset 10 to 15% fewer jobs.
Yeah.
Right, and because the total income number we're doing is literally total, right?
Right.
And so, yeah, I mean, prices could go up quite a bit, but there's just fewer people working.
Mm-hmm.
I think restaurants too have, there was a lot of pent up demand. So good restaurants are really busy right now. It's kind of like the Hawaii tourism. There was so much pent up demand during the lockdown. But the question is that going to continue for the rest of the year and into 2022?
Yeah, I mean, we're dealing with this transition away from federal support.
Yeah.
That's basically ending, right? By early September, the unemployment benefits are going away. There's no reason to expect anything in additional transfer payments other than what was already in the law. Granted, it looks like there's a sliver of hope that I haven't seen the news today, but we might actually get an infrastructure bill. Even if we do, that's likely to be a late 2022 story before the money hits the ground, right? There's no such thing as a shovel-ready project. And so, the question is, will there be enough people back at work earning a high enough income to offset those losses? And And that's really a 2022 story, right? In 2021, the stimulus is what's still dominating.
Mhm.
Well, there may be a tax increase bill, right? That's bundled with the infrastructure bill.
Yeah,
they're-
but that's only for people like us.
People like us.
So it will have absolutely no effect on spending.
Well, spending by the more wealthy.
Yeah,
Okay,
I
so is
think
it,
the problem too is
Oh.
that aren't we running into the demographic problem in Hawaii? Where, you know, a lot of our workers are elderly, in the state even ready to retire. So the question is, will there be the workers to replace the baby boom generation of workers?
So remember, this is a 2-year forecast. So yeah, we think we know that population declined in 2020. That was what the intercental estimate said. You know, it's all confusing now because we have a 2020 census estimate also, or not an estimate, a count. So, I mean, your point is well taken. Longer term and even medium term, we should expect some decline in. We were seeing that pre-pandemic. We were seeing employment go down, labor force go down, and there's no reason to think that that's changed. So I would move 2% for this year and 2% for next year, minus 2% for next year.
The one thing I wanted to ask you, Carl, was how do you see the Delta variant playing out before we put it to vote?
Well, you know, the whole, and if you look at our forecast errors over the last year and a half, you know, much of that, it's a combination of two things. What the heck is the virus doing, right? And it does whatever it wants. And then what's happening with federal policy? Those have been the two huge swing factors. I guess the third one would be when do we open up to safe travels? Those were the three big drivers in the outlook. Right now, that we think we have a handle on federal policy. We think we have a handle on state policy. The Delta is wide open, and the thing that's different is that we know what to do in order to continue our level of economic activity or close to it, despite the Delta, right? I mean, you essentially have a few choices. You vaccinate, you wear masks, and you maintain some degree of social distancing, and you can do all that and keep most of your businesses open exactly at the same level we are right now. And so
Well,
barring case counts in the 600-700s, I don't think we're going to see huge impacts from Delta. Remember, the thing that matters is if you start to overwhelm the hospitals, and I guess there's a chance, a greater chance of that on the neighbor islands than on Oahu. But unless we're overwhelming the hospitals, I just don't see the policy response being to backtrack.
Kurt, can I ask a quick question of Seth? Seth, and I don't know whether you have these numbers or can tell, but the state was pushing for, I guess, these digital nomads to try to potentially work here. Do those wages constitute? Would they fall into our wages here, or if they're coming from another location working remotely here? How does that factor into the total personal income? Is that included in this number, or is that excluded because they're technically a resident of another state?
They declare their residency here, and they're supposed to declare the residency here if they're spending more. I think it's more than 180 days.
200 is the state law
200, yeah.
prevention.
200. Okay.
Yeah, 183 is the federal law.
Yeah, then they would be included. If not, they would not be included.
but if they're doing business and actually working in the state, I think that they're supposed to be reporting the income in the state. But
If they're operating as a business.
no, if they're an employee working here. But
Yeah, but if you work for Google and their office is in Seattle or in San Francisco, and you're here for 3 months, You
you're
don't have to
supposed to be
declare
paying Hawaii
residency.
taxes. Yeah, you're supposed to be paying Hawaii taxes, income taxes, because it's tax where you perform the service. You're performing the service from Hawaii.
Yeah.
I don't know how compliant these big.
I think the
That's what
problem
the law
with compliance
requires.
for all these people who are working from the mainland and working here, but you know, whether or not they comply with reporting their wages earned in Hawaii is a question, because I think the companies probably don't want to have all these multi-state W-2s all over the place. And so it's a question of compliance to try to get them to report their income to Hawaii versus other states.
But as a whole, I mean, that probably can't be that big of a number, is it, Seth?
No, I wouldn't. If I were you guys, I would not incorporate that into my overall.
Yeah. Okay. No, I was just
Yeah,
curious
calculations,
as far as
yeah.
whether that moves the needle at all, but it doesn't sound like it. Okay,
No.
great. Thank you.
Can I make a second to Carl's motion?
Yes, yes. Okay, any further discussion? So the recommendation by Dr. Bottom was 2% for calendar year 2021. Take a vote. Vice Chair Newell,
I would have been more comfortable with 1.5, you know,
okay,
because
two,
of the,
voting,
uh,
you,
Huh?
okay, go ahead.
because of the pandemic. I mean,
Is that a
because-
yay or a nay?
I would say nay because of the pandemic.
Okay. Dr. Siderhouse,
Aye.
Dr. Bonham,
Aye.
Councilmember Maynard,
I'm okay with it. I think it is a little high, but we'll see.
Yeah.
I,
um,
0.5% is not that big of a change.
Councilmember Hayashi,
Aye.
Councilmember Lee,
Aye.
and I kind of agree with Christy, but I'm going to vote yes. Yeah, not just because of the pandemic, and also because inflation's 3% too. According, yeah.
Yeah, but if inflation 3%, that should actually increase the nominal number.
Yeah. But I took that into account in agreeing to the 2%. Okay, next item on the agenda is, so we took the vote, right? It carried, how much did it carry? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, 6 yeas and 1 no. Okay. Discussion on calendar year 2022. Dr. Barnum or Dr. Sidehouse, would either of you want to go first?
I'll
Well,
go.
we're discussing, so you understand there's a motion on the table, right?
We voted on the motion?
-2 for 2022.
Yeah, Carl had a two-part motion for both years.
Oh, okay. Well, I wanted to take it one at a time. So
Yeah.
your second motion, Carl, which I wanted to vote on separately, is -2 for calendar year 2022.
That's correct.
So Jack, did you second that part of the motion too?
Sure.
Okay. Anyone want to discuss -2 for calendar year 2022?
Could you repeat or summarize your reasons for -2?
No federal stimulus.
And you don't think tourism is going to make up for that?
Tourism is, according to our estimates, July tourism was statewide was 90% of 2019 levels. And employment is still only, is still 14% below 2019 levels. And, you know, will we make up that difference of, what was the number? 22 billion. It's a 5 billion loss roughly, right? A 5 or 6 billion loss between 20. Yeah, it's a 6 billion loss according to UCLA from 2021 to 2022. Are we going to make that up by putting people fully back to work? And I don't think so.
Okay.
Look, their wage and salary. So wage and salary estimate in the UCLA number stays the same from 2021 to 2022. I don't think that's the case, but you know, 2 or 3 percentage points more wage and salary growth there 10% would be 3.6 billion. It's not going to offset the 6 billion loss in
Government assistance.
So Carl, along those lines, you think 2% is reasonable? It shouldn't be larger than that based upon, I guess, those numbers that you were just kind of quoting. With, I guess, looking at the transfer receipts, if the transfer receipts go down by 6 million and wage and salaries, even go up by 3.6, then that would seem to be a bigger gap than 2%.
Yeah, I mean, the UCLA forecast is -5,
Right.
but they've got no growth in wages, wage and salaries, which strikes me as, I don't know how you get that. I mean, basically, you'd have to assume no improvement in our economy over the 2 years. I don't think that's very reasonable.
It looks like at the far end of 5% negative potentially in 2022, but if the infrastructure comes in and hits at the back of 2022, we might hopefully start ticking up by 2023. That would mitigate some of this angst with the 2% decrease in 2022, between 2 and 5%.
And I think we should also consider the return of international tourism as well.
Yeah,
It's a good point.
Japan is a big.
Hopefully we get that in 2022.
That would be nice.
Yeah, although I heard countries like China, they're going to be closed for another year, at least through the Olympics, Beijing Olympics in 2022.
Wow.
So just curious, Carl, once again, I'm soliciting your insight on this. The HTA just recently announced that they're planning on kind of focusing tourism and reducing the numbers of tourists, right, and focusing on higher quality tourism. So would that, with our numbers now being at 90% of where we were in 2019, is it reasonable to think that it's going to increase, or will it stay about the same, since HTA is going to be potentially, changing, I guess, their focus? Now, maybe it's overall spending is going to increase, because my understanding is the current tourists that are coming aren't spending at the same level that they did at 2019. The volume may be there, but I don't know if the spending is necessarily the same.
It's not that different. It's, okay. I mean, if I recall the June data, I don't recall the exact differences. I think when I looked at the June spending, it was about 12% below 2019 levels.
Yeah,
and so, yeah, it's a different visitor. I mean, over the next 2 years, the plans that HTA is working on right now are not, they're not really going to have huge impacts in 2021, right? I mean, these are things that are going to take time, and they're going to need additional authority and they're going to actually need some revenue also to implement some of these things. And in the meantime, in 2021 and the beginning of 2022, the pandemic's going to still drive everything, right? What will the mix of visitors be like? It's not so much going to be because of who we're marketing to, so much as, what destinations are open to travel and what destinations are safe. So I think Wendell made an obvious point that getting international visitors back will impact spending in a positive way. But Japan is still at 20 to 30% vaccinated, right? It'll be a big test to see how they come out of the Olympics in terms of their case counts with the Delta variant, and whether we can get Japanese tourists back here by the end of the year. I think that's a good target, but I don't know if we're going to get there.
I think Jack mentioned the international tourists too. Yeah,
that's going to be key.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's a good goal. All of these things are going to matter. I mean, frankly, the uncertainty here is large enough to encompass a forecast from, -3 or 4 to, well, I mean, we have a forecast from UCLA that's -5. So, there's a range. I picked a number. When we produce our forecast, we're producing scenarios that are off, that differ by several percentage points.
So what is your most likely scenario showing, Carl?
Well, the -2 is what's coming out of our model right now after I did the adjustments for the strength of tourism that we've had so far, and also for the most recent data, the first quarter data, and the slower than expected job growth. So it's it's what I would say is our most likely right now.
You know, on Maui, they're going to try to lower the amount of the tourists by going after the vacation rentals for anyone who is not complying with the local county rules. Airbnb and VRBO are going to be assisting with removing those rental properties. And so that, I think, is going to actually reduce the number of tourists on Maui. And I'm not sure what efforts are exactly they're going to do on Oahu to cut down a number of tourists. But I think this feeling that let's get rid of the tourists now, and if there's that movement that they don't want as many tourists, then you're going to find us going a bit backward as far as our businesses and economy.
So that's possible. It's not the only outcome, right? I mean, the one that Scott was alluding to was a different mix of visitors. And, so we did some simulations of our model back when City and County of Honolulu passed the ordinance that made it illegal to advertise a short-term vacation rental that wasn't permitted or wasn't in a resort zone. And Oahu has by far the largest percentage of short-term vacation rentals that are not permitted because we didn't issue any permits for 30 years. And actually, Oahu's short-term vacation rentals have not recovered the same way those on Maui and other islands have. And anyway, when we did those simulations of what happens if you basically eliminate all of the illegal short-term vacation rentals operating on Oahu, we actually ended up with higher visitor spending, fewer visitors, higher room rates, visitors staying in more expensive properties, and overall visitor spending went up. That doesn't mean that'll be the outcome. It's just a simulation, and the hard part is getting full enforcement. If you go and you look at listings in Airbnb today, I think you'll still find listings on Oahu that don't have permit numbers. And Oahu, I think Kauai led the way with that effort, and Oahu is participating now to where you're not supposed to be able to list a property without a permit number. You are seeing quite a few that do have permit numbers, but some are still showing up that don't have.
And a lot of people are just doing 30-day rentals.
Yeah.
Which is totally compliant with the land use laws, at least of Oahu.
Well, they're listing them as 30-day rentals.
Yep.
Yep.
So enforcement is hard, apparently.
And I do think like the demand for short-term rentals is actually higher than hotels, right? Because people are trying to be away from people, not in a huge apartment building that goes in and out. So.
Yeah, we would all like to have very rich tourists who stay in fancy places and spend lots and lots of money.
And
So-
only hang out at the resorts and never walk on our trails or go to our beaches.
That's right. Stay
The
away.
way that you have to get there is you have to invest in your industry and in your properties, right? I mean, if you look at what happened in Waikiki after Beach Walk, think about taking old properties and upgrading them, and all of a sudden your revenue goes through the roof. And that's how we get higher spending visitors, plus charging them for what they use while they're here, including trails, parking lots, etc.
I think here, what we see on the neighbor islands anyway, we already have high enough hotel room rates, some approaching 1,000
Yeah.
a night or more. And so I don't think that we can go higher than that. So I think Oahu has room to grow. I mean, renovate and fix up things. So I think there's potential if there's money put into those efforts.
If we build it, they will come. Maybe.
Yeah, except for, I think that you have things like Ala Moana that the retail shops don't really look like they made it. There's a lot of retail stores, even here on Maui, that Kaumana Shopping Center doesn't look very good. And so things that we used to have retail is a lot of it is gone. And a lot of restaurants here, good restaurants, went under too. So we don't have as many restaurants, we don't have as much retail.
So as those come roaring back in 2022,
They,
we will only have income loss of 2% instead of 5%. Because if we're operating, Maui's operating at more than 2019 levels of visitors. And so there's money to be had for, entrepreneurial new restaurant owners or old restaurant owners coming back and relaunching many of those businesses.
I agree that Maui probably, if I look at all the islands, probably Maui has the most potential to get the most money from the visitor industry. Just because they built all these all-in-one resorts. And you came here, right, Carl, in July?
Did I go there in July?
Didn't you?
I don't think
thought you
so.
said-
I went to the Big Island.
Oh, okay. So anyway, I think that as much as the airport here is super crowded, and as much as all the tourists are now driving on the road, everybody seems to be driving on the road. The local people during the pandemic decided that they'll go to the beach and fish and use the parks, buy a dog, go to the park. So now when we add on the visitors, it seems a lot more crowded, but it's not, people's behavior change. And then we have all these tourists coming over and they're like desperate to get outdoors, desperate to see things because they've been cooped up in their apartments or wherever they were. And so I get this feeling of desperation when people are trying to vacation here. And I'm not sure how long that would last.
I kind of feel that sense in this conversation about our forecast.
Desperation.
We seem to be going in circles a little bit.
So
Yeah,
Carl put -2. Is there any other numbers anyone wants to consider?
Well, it's an off year. We have another year.
I'm okay with the -2. It's anyone's guess, really, with all of the
Yeah.
I'm fine.
government
I'm fine with
money
that.
falling in and coming, coming back out again. I don't know.
It's reasonable.
I think Dr. Siderhouse, he seconded the motion, right? So
I
think we're
did.
ready for a vote. Okay, take a vote for calendar year 2022. The council's proposed forecast is -2. Vice Chairman Niwa,
Aye.
Dr. Siderhouse,
Aye.
Dr. Bonham,
I
Councilmember Maynard,
Aye.
Councilmember Hayashi,
Aye.
Councilmember Lee.
Aye.
Okay, the vote carries unanimously. So it's, just to recap, it's -2 for calendar year, -2% growth rate for calendar year 2022. And we earlier forecast +2% for calendar year 2021. So next item on the agenda. So Dr. Scobie, is there anything else before, other than scheduling the meeting, next meeting?
If you want to introduce Wendell Lee a little bit.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Thank you for reminding me. Well, we want to welcome you, Councilmember Lee. Would you want us to say a little bit about ourselves, or would you want to introduce yourself first?
Oh, I can do a quick introduction. I know several of you, so yeah, I'm looking forward to this and learning and contributing. I had a 30-year career in doing taxation, tax accounting. I retired in 2016 from a public accounting firm. And then I started teaching at the University of Hawaii, West Oahu, teach taxes. And a second career found me where I'm doing professional trustee work now. So from being retired, I feel like I'm more busy than I ever have been before, which has been fun with COVID because it kept me appreciative of what was going on in life. And I enjoy what I'm doing, and I hope I can contribute to the council.
Oh, well, thank you. Welcome aboard, Councilmember Lee. I guess, do we want to maybe introduce ourselves to Councilmember Lee? So you want to go first, Christy?
Sure. So nice to meet you, Wendell. I'm currently the CFO of Finance Factors. Had a long career in banking. Previously was a treasurer of one of the big banks here, and also worked for HHFTC as a CFO there. So I also retired and kept working. So it's been really good.
Yes,
And
sir.
I've enjoyed working on the council. I welcome you.
Thank you. Thank you, Kristen.
I'm going to cross my screen here. Councilmember Hayashi?
Well, Wendell and I know each other we've known each other for a long time now. So, yeah, Wendell knew me when I was at Alexander Baldwin. So since I've left there, Wendell, I'm now, then I went back into public accounting, which I think you knew.
Right.
Was at CW, and then left CW, I guess it was last year, and joined SSFM as the business manager. So I'm over here doing engineering work now. So
You didn't learn about public accounting.
Dr. Siderhout?
Hi, Jack Siderhout, retired from Scheidler College of Business, UH Manoa, and retired from everything else also, except the council.
Oh, you're the smart one.
And occasionally we sing as I'm a member of a chorale and an officer in a chorale.
Oh, okay.
Please.
Didn't know that. Marilyn?
Hi, I'm Marilyn Newell, and I am owner of a CPA firm on Maui, Newell and Roberts. Been in public accounting for quite a number of years. Started out at Coopers and Lybrand and then worked for Deloitte before I started this firm with my late husband and my current husband. And so I have had a lot of experience there. And I also have a background in biostatistics.
And also in health, right? Public health?
I have a degree in public health, 2-year degree in public health,
Okay.
Doing medical research.
That's awesome. Nice to see you again, Marilyn.
Yeah. Dr. Bonham?
I'm Carl Bonham, the longest serving member of the Council on Revenues, literally.
How many years, Carl, has it been?
I'm pretty sure I joined in 1996.
Wow.
And I know I was off for, I think, 2 years. Yeah, anyway, so it's been a really, really long time. And hold on, I gotta shut up, Stuart. And I'm I'm a professor at University of Hawaii in economics and the director of UHERO.
Mhm. Well, thank you, Carl. So I'm Kurt Kawafuchi. Wendell, I know you. We work on cases together. Former tax director and been involved with the council you know, from when I started as tax director. So coming up on almost 20 years.
Wow,
Yeah.
didn't realize that. It's awesome.
And then, you know, I mean, I had experience. I mean, I worked at the, as you know, a couple of law firms, worked in, most recently worked in Beverly Hills with the Hockman, Salk and Reddick firm. And then I did a stint early in my career. I was trying cases for the Justice Department, IRS cases. And I also worked at the Attorney General's, you know, supervising the Tax and Charities Division for 3 years. So that's my background.
Thank you, Kurt.
Okay, thank you. Okay, well, thank you. Welcome aboard again, Wendell. So the next final item is to schedule the next general fund meeting, right, Dr. Kobe? When is the report date?
The 10th of September.
10th of September. And generally, when do you think you might have the August report available?
We will have, the official report will come out on the 8th. If you wanted to have it on the 7th, we could get you to the numbers within a couple, like $1 million.
Okay. But that's pretty close.
Yeah. So, I mean, for functionally, we've gotten to the point where, you know, whether you had it on the 3rd, the 7th, or the 8th, we could get you all as much information as you needed.
So Labor Day is the day before, right? September the 6th.
Correct.
So how is everyone for September the 7th, 2 p.m.?
Sounds good.
Yeah,
That's-
works for me.
Okay. Okay, is that good for everyone? So if it is, we're going to schedule the meeting for September 7th at 2 p.m. And it's going to be remote again, right, Dr. Kobe?
Yes.
Okay. I think that concludes today's agenda for the Council of Revenues. Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
See you next time.
You,
Okay, see everyone September 7th, 2 p.m.
Bye.
good,
Bye.
thanks.
Bye.